Howdy y'all, and it's kind of dark in here. Let me find a light switch. I'm okay. Oh, wait, there's the switch. That's better. This is actually the second intro to this video. I didn't like the first one. It didn't quite explain what I needed it to explain. So here we are doing it a little different. The future versions of this series will not have much of an intro. So I think it's kind of important to know what this series is and what I'm doing with it. Ever since I got the 5-piece 50th anniversary Hot Wheels set a while back, and I did a video on it, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole. I mean, I went far down. I saw Alice, and I just kept walking into Wonderland. And what I've found out about Redline since then really made me fall in love with them even more than when I was a kid. There's now a huge community of people who restore them and parts. Back when I had my original Redline collection, there were no parts available. I mean, hell, I was buying Hot Wheels over eBay using money orders because PayPal didn't exist yet. That's not an exaggeration. I don't even think eBay allows that anymore. But the point is, there are so many parts available now. Between paints, between wheels, windshields, hoods, engine parts, just everything you can imagine, even new rivets, which is amazing. None of this stuff existed, which meant I couldn't restore my original Hot Wheels. There was no way for me to do that. I was probably a little bit too young to where I probably shouldn't have anyways, but the point is, all that stuff is available now, which means I can buy Hot Wheels super cheap and then restore them. But I want to clarify right now, this is not a project show. Yes, many of the episodes, maybe even the majority of them, will have some work done on the Hot Wheels, whether it be full restorations like in this video, or whether it just be cleanups and slight repairs, which may be in future videos. The point of these videos is more about showing off the Hot Wheels and talking about the history of them. Each Hot Wheels car has its own history, though some of them the history is a bit vague. The two we're looking at today, it's not very vague. Now, I'm not going to go into extreme details when I'm talking about everything about these cars, but just enough to sort of inform you on why they exist, maybe. So, not all episodes will have restorations. Now, as I collect Redlines, I've made a set of rules. These rules are as follows. I will collect anything made 1972 or prior, and larger accessories that are replicas of that stuff. And I will collect anything that has the proper 2-piece mag rim wheels, meaning you don't see the axle in the center. It's actually completely covered. That's what I'm going for. But because there are so many parts available, including just full axles, truthfully, I plan to buy a few Hot Wheels that I really like and turn them into Redlines as well. Those will be videos too. Stage fright is a great example. So's dumping a truck in, whichever you want to call it. I would say teetotaler, but they apparently already made a Redline of that. So depending on what the car is will depend on what I do. If it is a very poor condition Hot Wheels, then I'm going to restore it and then talk about it. The restoring is going to be a very short part of the video. If it's a Redline Club Hot Wheels, I'm probably going to open it, then talk about it. If it's a play set, then I'll probably clean it up and talk about it if it needs cleaned up, or I'll just talk about it and show it off and so on and so forth. I think that pretty much sums up what I'm going to be doing with these videos. Again, there won't be a big intro like this in the future ones. It's not necessary. I just wanted to explain what I was doing for the first episode. So as you can see, we're doing a Jackrabbit Special and a Ford Mark IV. So let's jump in. The Jackrabbit Special. Introduced in 1970, this Hot Wheels quickly became one of the most popular of the Redline era. And, well, they kind of wanted it that way. You see, this car appeared everywhere. It was on advertising, it was on posters, it even had a Jack-in-the-Box version. Oh, but it didn't stop there, because it was featured on the television show, it was featured in the comic book, and it was even on the cover of the Hot Wheels album. Yes, there was a Hot Wheels album, and we will look at that at some point. This was one of the most famous cars of all time for them. And because of that, it sold very well, and you can pick them up quite cheap. But you might notice something very different about this particular car. It's not quite the rainbow spectrum of Spectra Flame that most other Hot Wheels cars came available in. It's white enamel with a blue stripe and red painted brake lights. So why is this one only available in non-Spectra Flame colors? Well, to understand that, you have to know what this car is based on. While Hot Wheels can be accredited with designing it, it took a bit of inspiration from the original Mustang. While it's not an exact copy of the original 1962 prototype, it does obviously carry a lot of similarities. It's been certainly inspired by it, and that's probably why it was painted in the way it was. Blue and white paint scheme made it a bit more obvious as to what it was alluding to, especially by the late 60s when the actual Mustangs that entered production were almost most commonly found in white with a blue stripe. That was the most popular color, and it's the one that most people remember from that time period. Just like today, Mustangs are often thought of as being dark blue with white stripes. Now, between the Hong Kong and the US versions, there are only really two major differences. Of course, the windshields, which isn't even worth mentioning since that's a pretty common thing in between which country they were made in. The biggest difference actually is the stripe. This stripe is painted on, as was the original before the restoration. I don't like to toot my own horn, but I will say I think I did a bit better job than the original painter since mine had quite a bit of overspray and wasn't on straight. But ultimately the US versions were painted, while the Hong Kong versions were a decal, which you can buy, by the way, if you don't want to go through the trouble of painting it. And in case you're wondering why I use Scotch tape, it's because painter's tape doesn't work anymore. It hasn't in a few years, unfortunately. They've changed the product too much. Now, suspension-wise on this car, this actually has a live axle system on both the front and the rear. What that means is that these are solid axles all the way across, and there is a large plastic piece over them that works to spring them up, rather than having independent suspension. Now in the rear, it has an opening hood with a rear-mounted engine. One of my favorite parts of this engine is that it isn't part of the bottom die cast, so there's actually a little bit of movement in it, sort of like what a real engine would have. I quite like that little detail. And the brake lights in the back look fantastic. For a quick look at the interior, this particular one has a clear windshield and a white interior. And here's the base. For a number of reasons, this will always be one of the most iconic of the Redline generation. It's the first Redline I believe I ever owned in my original collection, so it was easily the first pick to buy and restore for my new collection. The Ford Mark IV, or as you probably know it, the GT40. The Mark IV only ran in 2 races in 1967, the 12-hour Sebring race and the 24-hour Le Mans. It won them both. One of the big details that made this car stand out from the original GT40s is that unlike the past ones which were built and designed in Britain, this one was built and designed completely in America. Using its 7-liter engine with its 4-speed gearbox, this car was able to achieve 212 miles per hour on the Mulsanne Straight. This car became an icon of racing history, and for good reason. And this Hot Wheels is no different. This is the best-selling of the models, the enamel red. Again, no Spectra Flame on this particular car, but they were available. So why did they make this one in enamel red? Well, because this is the original car. So to best match the original, they made it in basic enamel red as one of the color options. This car also would have come with a sticker set when it was newer, and the sticker set would have emulated the original stickers of the original race car. I've ordered those, they haven't gotten here yet. When they do, I will be putting them on this particular car. If I buy other versions of this car in other colors, I won't be doing that, because this one is the best replica of the original. Now, much like the Jackrabbit Special, this one does have a rear-mounted engine and an opening hood. And here's a look at the polished and fairly well-detailed engine. Now, one of the other similarities this shares with the Jackrabbit Special is that it was also only produced 1 year, or at least officially. This particular one being made in 1969. I should add, for the Jackrabbit Special, they did rename it Sandwich and release it later, but, you know, technically if you change the name, it's not really the same car, so. However, where these really differ is the suspension. Whereas the Jackrabbit Special had a live axle, this actually has independent suspension, meaning each wheel can move up and down. There's not a solid axle in between there. So technically speaking, if I go like this, it shouldn't affect the other wheel at all. It doesn't really make a difference, especially for a toy car, but still, I think it came out beautifully. I think they both came out beautifully. Like I said, I did order the stickers for this one, and when they get here I will add them, and I'll probably just show it a little bit in the next video for this stuff. So that's it for this time. Happy trails and happy motoring.